Paul, that was all three were wonderful presentations. Thank you so much. It was really, really inspirational. Your story is fantastic. You've started something really meaningful. You've made incredible achievements in doing it. And you sold out. And I'm just really wondering what's next. You're a young guy. Will you do it again?
I like the young guy bit.
Well, will you do it again? And if you were to do it again, what would you do differently this time around?
So I have just co-founded a business that is outside of the food space, actually, but it is all about trying to show that business can do social change. So that's my big thing, if you like. Called the Keersey with a different rap artist than the hip hop artist than the one I showed, but trying to use music to engage young people to get into entrepreneurialism to change society. So that I'm kind of founded that, and it's something different. But I alluded to my son there, Patrick, and he once, when he was 4, said, "Well, do you think they, I love, would do a Paddy's Kitchen?" And I thought, well, there's, retailers can knock on my door and sort of kind of scare me sometimes, and the bank manager certainly could. So I have it to sort of find something, and I think if you invite me here next year, I think I might have found what Paddy can do.
We can't wait for that. And I hope nobody in this audience is now going to go out and start Paddy's Kitchen before. Any more questions? Sorry, it's hard to see here with the light. Anybody else with a question? Yep, up here on this, just on the outside here. Hang on, the mic's coming down.
Thank you. Just as you were building your brands and sort of starting out, I know in my own particular case that the whole retailer relationship and how to hit a cost competitive position in terms of getting on shelves and the kind of volume and all the sort of distribution issues. How do you handle that, and how do you advise making that sort of leap? Because it's sort of a leap where you can't price as an artisan producer and get mass. You sort of have to build your brand, get on shelves, and move quarter pallets to cover big distribution chains.
I'll ask Paul to handle that first, and then Anders, because from the American perspective, and then I'll ask Nadeem what he would advise as a consultant companies, particularly start-off companies, to do in relation to retailers. So Paul, if you could.
So there's this fine balance, isn't there, between kind of going in and winging it and kind of over-promising things because you want the listing, and being realistic about the worst thing to do is to get a listing for 500 stores and not be able to deliver 500. That is absolutely worse. So I took the view that I knew how, I kind of worked out that we want to be fast growth, but I also knew that we needed a margin that we could live with from day one, so I thought it's just going to get worse in year 2 or year 3, that I'm at the best point in year 1. And I also knew that I wasn't going to compete with price, because I couldn't have the scalability or the economies of scale. So we had to find another point of difference, and had to go in with a persuasion that they hadn't spotted something in the marketplace, that something that I had was something that consumers would want. And I just thought, I've got one crack at this with each of them. I want to go in with the confidence that I know more about the business and why their consumer would want this than they would, because they hadn't thought about it. I was prepared to walk away if the margins weren't right, because I needed a business. And that the passion and the sort of integrity, if you like, that I could come over was something that they'd remember at the end of that week, and they'd remember when they went to their boss and they made their decisions about listing windows. So competing on price is very different, very difficult in anything that's an added value product. So I'd stay well away from that. I'd find the things that is sustainably different that you've got, but I wouldn't bite off more than you can chew. I would definitely walk away if it just doesn't add up.
Anders, thanks very much, Paul.
As another added value product and series of added value products, a very similar response that I would have. When we first launched Athlete's Honey Milk in 2008, we were selling online. We did not have any retail distribution at all. And what we ended up trying to do in areas where we were doing a lot of field marketing was that we put out feelers with the consumers and we asked for them to tell us where they want to purchase the product, so that we could actually go to these retailers with lists of people who essentially had signed petitions saying, carry this product for us, please. Because we couldn't come in, the same thing with, as Paul is saying, we couldn't come in with a better price than some of these existing products that were on the market. Our whole process from grass to glass, therefore, ends up being a much, not much more expensive. It's at parity now with our competition, but in the early days, it was more expensive. So we had to sort of get that demand coming from the consumer before they had even, a lot of the retailers had even heard of the product. That's sort of one tactic we did on a very small scale in the Texas area, and that sort of ended up with us partnering with H-E-B grocery stores in Texas, which is a very big and powerful and very, very popular grocery store. We knew that if because people love their H-E-B stores in Texas, so we knew that if we could get in there, we would start to see like a ripple effect. Another sort of variation of that has to do with teaming up with retailers so that they felt like they were a part of the launch of the product, and that extends for us anyway, not only from H-E-B in Texas, but to Wegmans up in the Northeast. Wegmans is a very influential grocery store chain in the United States, and again, it's the same thing with an H-E-B consumer as a Wegmans consumer. Those consumers love their stores. They live and die by those stores. They spend a lot of time in those stores. So we built up this, when we launched into Wegmans, we did come down in price as much as we possibly could, but we also had them play a big part in how the launch was going to take place. And that sort of built up a really nice start for the whole thing, which allowed us to then go to other retailers who are watching the Wegmans and the H-E-Bs of the world and say, look, this is a product that consumers responded really well to, and it's doing well in the first few months of being on the shelves.
Very good. Nadeem, what advice would you?
The idea of positive exchange, as I sort of think of it, that have as many positive interactions as you can along the journey with consumers, applies equally to retailers. We are the things that they can consume. The brand that you bring is one of many that they could have. And I think it's kind of applying the same thing. It's, what are your causes for seduction? What are your causes for persuasion? Put them cogently and work it through and show, it's obviously a different kind of consumer journey for the retailer with your brand, but there are points. What's the point of listing? What's profitability? What's the sustainability of your brand in their, their meter of space that they're going to give you? What are the innovations that are coming down the line? It's the same set of lenses, in fact, but just played around to the trade.
Okay, I'm sure Google have everything here. Is there any possibility we could have a pair of green socks for Paul and white socks for me?
I was just going to ask if I was got that memo.
I hope it's not a political signal.
What happened?
Actually, Anders has supplied 2 political slogans, it occurs to me tonight. But given the news of the 2 government parties, can you imagine Enda going with a country that gets it? And for Joan, fair life. Is that not the ideal slogan? There must be another question, or I'll keep going on with that.
One question.
Yep.
Is that working now?
Yeah, it is, yep.
I'm Karen, and my question is just for Paul. It's just, you said your background was in KPMG and Nickelodeon. Going into something like the industry that you were going in, and against multinationals that have huge spend behind science and all different, I suppose, production methods, different products. Is that daunting? Or for other kind of smaller brands, how would you, I suppose, give advice on going into something that wouldn't necessarily be your original expertise?
Sort of a crash course in sort of how the industry works was something that I invested some of my first bits of money in, sort of a week with somebody who'd been in the industry for a long time. But really, I think that regulation and technology sort of have taken a lot of the guesswork out of it. So you have a regulation where you've got to be above it, especially in my industry where it's baby food. So that takes some of the risk out, if you like. So they've set the bar. And if you don't I think you've got to understand the costing side of it. I think that's probably the most important. The technical side, the first two people I employed were operations and technical, because that are the bits that I knew nothing about. I thought I could wing it as a salesperson, I could do the marketing, I could knew the numbers. So I didn't choose to play, I choose to get the expertise in early for that. But I think by learning the regulation and understanding, that food is safe to be sold in this country, takes some of the sort of scariness out of it. You've got a bar that you've got to reach to have a business.
Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else desperately keen? I think I'm getting the signal. Oh, sorry, there's one up there. Very anxious to ask a question.
John, thanks. David Phelan here. Just a question for Nadine. You did a fantastic job on the development, beautifully developed product in Innisturbeig whiskey. You know all the development of Irish whiskey and how it's been seeing explosive growth and a lot of people moving into it. Would he have any sort of learnings and surprises or that he got going into that business and developing an Irish whiskey brand?
God, that's a big one.
Well, you don't have very much time.
No. What I'm kind of conscious of these days is having had my chance, not having taken it well enough. I didn't do badly, and it's still going, but the big chance would have been better served by, I think, as Paul just said, being aware of what I didn't know earlier. So I wasn't aware of how controlled the industry was and how difficult it was to source product. I didn't understand how difficult distribution was and how tied up that was through commercial deals that I had no traction, within. So I think, partnering, I think if I was to do it again, I'd partner with, hopefully a minority partner who would give us the traction in areas that we couldn't naturally get just through the brand's proposition and interest for the consumer, but which actually had to work in the industry. Going to the States, for example, and that kind of 3-tier system of alcohol into the States, was just incredibly complex, and I spent probably too much time getting around all of that. So I think partnering with somebody who's got a whole pile of category skills already, if you're starting something new, is really a valuable thing to do. But above that, I mean, they're the problems. I think just being really true to a vision that you have for the brand and thinking about purpose all the time. We've all said that tonight, and finding your differentiation that's both seductive and persuasive. I think it's that simple formula.
Thanks very much. I'd like to thank all 3 speakers again, remind you about the 13th of November, and just to say that the presentations will be up there on the Brand Forum website. We'll try and do a summary as well. And it is important. I mean, there's so many lessons from the 3 papers tonight. It's important. I mean, I would suggest you take some time out with your colleagues and work in the way that Paul has suggested, and just see how those lessons can apply to your business or give you new ideas for your business, for improving your business. Thank you very much.
Nice job. Beautiful.